I would just want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. I think we'll have a brief session this morning. We just wanted to take an opportunity to go over what's going to happen the next 6 weeks and to give folks a little bit of an update on what we've been doing for implementation. So I'll just get started here. Hey, is this okay? So I had said a couple of weeks ago that during the last webinar that we had taken a step back to rethink some timelines around how we were going to move forward with regional planning. And so we have done that. And now I'm just going to give you a brief update of where we are with that and let you know of what's going to be coming up over the next few months. So it's not working. Sorry, guys, I'm having a malfunction here. Okay. So for the regional planning update, we started with a workforce vision that I'll go over in just a second. We've come up with some strategic planning elements. Those are mainly for our unified state plan, but I think they will also guide what we're doing in our regional planning efforts with you all. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the approach and then what the upcoming events are going to be and activities. Regarding the Policy Academy overview, I know many of you already heard this before, but back in August, key state leaders and some of our partners all engaged in a process where we came up with a statewide vision for workforce in Illinois. It wasn't only just for WIOA, but it's for the larger state of Illinois system in general. We did have very good representation from businesses at that Policy Academy, and at the end of the day, we came up with this following vision: employer-driven talent solutions that integrate education, workforce, and economic development resources across systems to provide businesses, individuals, and communities with the opportunity to prosper and contribute to growing the state's economy. And from that vision, we also developed a set of principles. And I won't go over each of these individually, but you can kind of see that it's certainly in line with what we've been talking about in general with WIOA, that's demand-driven. We're forming strong partnerships, focusing on career pathways, ensuring that we have cross-agency collaboration and an integrated service delivery model, as well as establishing clear metrics for success. The planning elements that I'm going to go over on the next two slides are really, as I said, more to guide our state plan, but again, I think will be useful and will be a foundation for the regional planning. And again, those also aligned with what we did on the Policy Academy and the principles that are guiding our work for workforce. And it's, the big one, aligning integration and education, making sure that we're doing employer-driven regional sector partnerships, that we're expanding career pathways. We're expanding career services, I think, is an important one, and information for employers and job seekers. Then we're improving the Illinois public-private data infrastructure so that we can support the alignment that we want to do through workforce education and development. Now I'm going to go over just real briefly what the process is going to be for the plan. There are 6 specific steps that will happen in the planning process. The first one, we're going to be defining the regions and gathering data. We've already, as many of you know, defined the regions and are using the 10 economic development regions as a starting point. We are in the process of working with our consultants, Mayor and IDES, to do some data analysis, and that data analysis will be used by you all during the regional planning process to make decisions around what are your key sectors for your region, What does your demographics look like? Do you have a high percentage of non-English speaking customers in your areas? What's the poverty rate? And those kind of factors to help influence not just what your strategies are, but what resources do you need to go forward in serving our customers. The second phase, or second step in the planning process, is to form the teams. There's two teams. One is the leadership team, which is at the state level. It's made up of all of the core, or many of the core, all four of the core partners, and other agencies, one-stop partners, as well as businesses, and we do have education and universities sitting at the table for that leadership team. The leadership team's role is really to guide the regional planning process, and it forms sort of, gives not just the guidance, but also gives us the vision through the Policy Academy and some of the other things that we're doing. The regional planning team, we're starting, and I'll go over those activities in just a minute. We're just getting ready to kick those off. The third thing would be looking at our visions. So as we're starting and convening our regional planning, our regional teams, what's the vision for the region? What talent and needs do we have? So we'll be conducting a SWOT analysis as we move through the process. Then as we move on to the fifth and sixth stages in the process, we're going to really be looking at what strategies, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, do we need to do in our region to move us forward to meet the demands of the businesses and get our customers employed. And then, of course, the final stage is just readjusting. What do we do to sustain our plan? How do we move forward? What are we going to do to implement it? And what kinds of service access do we need? Can we just hold on questions, because I'm just about done. I've got a couple more slides, and then I'll take questions on the regional planning. These are our membership team. This is what we're looking like. It certainly can be other stakeholders, but workforce is a key in the team, community colleges and universities, economic development, K through 12, voc rehab, particularly businesses from your target sectors. We'll formulate the membership of the team, and these are the roles that the team will play. They'll participate in a self-assessment exercise. You're going to be attending the regional meetings and the statewide summit. In addition, in between those two meetings, you'll also be having technical assistance activities that Mayor and Mayor, our consulting group, will be conducting with you to ensure that you're ready for the regional meetings in October and then culminating in the statewide summit in January. So now I'm just going to go briefly over what are the activities that are about to begin. October 22nd, we're doing a kickoff webinar. That kickoff webinar is going to include the core partners, and at that webinar, we're going to be providing a project overview. We'll be introducing the concept of the regional meetings, as well as outlining the tasks that we're going to have to do between now and the December meetings. And then we're going to also be discussing what does the makeup of those regional teams look like? Who are the businesses? Who are the other maybe community-based providers that we're going to need? What community colleges are in your areas and or universities that you need to bring to the table? We wanted to make sure for that October meeting that we have a tighter group, since we're going to start getting into the real details of moving forward in the planning process, but we want to make sure that all of our partners hear the same message and start out the planning process on the same page. So we will be doing a regional planning overview webinar on November 3rd that will be open to anyone that wants to participate, and it will be a summary of what happened on October 22nd, but more detail than you're even getting today on moving forward in the regional planning process. The next thing that we'll be doing after those two webinars, you'll be engaging, as I said, with your technical assistance liaison and doing some activities that will prepare you for the regional meetings. Now, I must say I forgot to add draft to the regional assignments on this page. We do have some of our LWIAs that we need to work with the board and the chief elected officials on deciding which region they will ultimately be in, as WIOA has a requirement that no local area can fall across 2 regions. So that will be coming up. But this is, as I said, just a draft for planning purposes to kind of get an idea of where folks can meet in a somewhat as convenient of a location as possible, but also for planning purposes for mayor and mayor when they sign the technical assistance teams for each of the regions. So we're looking at 3 areas: Effingham, Bloomington, and Moraine Valley College in Chicago. And as you can see, right now, tentatively, again, I want to stress this is draft, we're looking at regions 2, 7, 8, and 9 to participate in the Effingham session. And you can also see that those impact LWIAs 17, 18, 23, 25, 26, 22, and 24. Then December 10th in Bloomington, we're doing regions 1, 3, 6, and 10, and that impacts LWIAs 19, 20, and 21, LWIA 15, LWIA 4 and 13, and LWIA 14. Then we'll conclude at December 11th at Moraine Valley College with regions 4 and region 5, which are the LWIAs 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, and then LWIA 3. And once we finish those regional meetings, while there will be lots of vacation time since that's right around the holiday season, there will also be some activities that the regional teams will go back in their communities and do, and then come back for the statewide summit in late January. And we're still looking at where we will hold that summit, but it will definitely be in a central location because we're bringing all 10 regional teams together in one location. So I suspect it probably would be Bloomington, Springfield area, but again, we're not sure. Then the next set, and I'm going to now stop and take questions on the regional planning process, and then we're going to conclude our last few minutes that we're going to have together, just giving you an update on what we're doing just in general with implementation. So what?
This is Levon,
Yeah.
Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I do have a question. The meetings, not the webinars, but the upcoming meetings. I know that the Title I folks have access to funding, because the federal money is being allowed to be spent. All the other partners, the state partners, and it is affecting a lot of the not-for-profits too now, since they're not able to receive, much of their funding. Are you concerned that these December meetings could be really affected, the ability of other partners to participate could be really affected by the lack of a budget? Have you thought about?
Yeah, that's a good question, Levon, and we know, of course, it's an issue, and we haven't really talked about it, but we certainly do and will address it. It's, right, because literally we just finalized these dates within the last few days. So now it's kind of like, what's the nitty-gritty? What's the backup plan if there isn't a budget in December? So we'll be, as we move along, we're going to either do more of these updates or be providing information via email and other forms of communication so everybody stays in the, in the loop with what's going on with the regional planning.
Yeah, I just think it really affects if, the ability to communicate and dialogue among all the partners, and if, physically, that's
Absolutely.
the reason you're having. And if they're not able to be there, I understand that emails are important, are useful, webinars are useful, but a whole dialogue could potentially be going on without critical partners being a part of the dialogue.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely,
yeah,
and we'll take that into account. And we certainly can't do regional planning with start out regional planning with all of the key partners at the table. So we'll be in those discussions and let folks know. Looks like we have a question on demographics for the local area in addition to the regional demographics. Yes, my understanding is yes, that will happen. We do have a team from the University of Illinois as well as IDES right now working on those demographics. So the answer to that question is yes. When and how will final decisions on these be finalized? That's also a good question. We are just now in the process of reviewing the legislation and the proposed regs with KEB to really get at the heart of who all has to be included in the regional planning and decision-making process. So that will be happening, in the next coming weeks. We do definitely, I think, before we get too far down the regional planning process, those decisions must be made. The kickoff webinar, who will be responsible for inviting the core partners for every LWIA? We have asked that for IDES, Voc Rehab, and Adult Ed, that they invite their key partners for the local workforce areas, the Title 1B folks. We have asked and have talked with the IWP, or at least have mentioned to Julie Courtney that we would like for those of you in each particular LWIA based on your region to come up with who should be the point person for this first meeting. And the answer to will only one Title I person per region be on the membership team, the answer to that is no. It's only for that initial kickoff webinar that we're asking for one person. After that, all of the regional planning activities will include every local workforce area. And I want to make sure that I stress that because I don't want anyone to think that they're being left out, because they're not at all. We're just asking for the kickoff webinar to have a really tight core team to move forward. And also what they'll be doing is determining who is the single point of contact, so that just to get out information and work with mayor and mayor. And it's mainly from a logistics standpoint. It certainly isn't the person that would necessarily emerge as the convener or in going forward the regional leadership team person. Just to confirm, that's correct. There is no October 21st meeting. It's October 22nd and November 3rd. That's correct on the two webinar dates. The time, I believe, is 11 to 1:30. There was an Eventbrite notice sent out for the 22nd. The November 3rd hasn't been determined yet, but I anticipate it being in the afternoon as well. There's a question on, do the LWIB staff attend the 1022 meeting or any others? That could be an LWIB staff person that attends that regional meeting. However, again, that's up to the LWIAs in the region to make the decision on who would be the point of contact for the meeting on the 22nd. Huh? Yes, it is. Chelsea's going to post the URL for the October 22nd meeting, but again, we do need that to be limited to just the one individual from each of the core partners. So, and we do have limited space available on that webinar. If there's no other questions on the regional planning process, and again, I would encourage all of you to please engage and register for the November 3rd webinar, because as I said, it's going to go into a lot more detail on the regional planning process. We again just were trying to give a brief update of what's coming ahead. So Bethany, if you're ready, I'm going to turn this over to you to go over what we've been up to the last couple of months.
I'm ready. This is Bethany Yeager from KEB. We've been facilitating some of these implementation activities, and we just thought this was a good opportunity to catch up on what's been going on and what you might be seeing in email traffic or otherwise. So some of the major teams that are working with us and that we are facilitating, one is the Interagency Team. We're calling this the Interagency Work Group. This essentially is the state-level representatives of the required program partners. And this team looks at the nuts and bolts of implementation from the state perspective. And the group right under that, the Task Advisory Groups, or TAGs for short, they tend to provide the local level perspective on the same issues. And we are coordinating both of them, and so that a lot of the times, especially now in the next few months, both groups are looking at similar or the same documents and providing their perspectives, local or state, so that we can kind of combine them all together and revise documents that way. And the way that one tool that we're using to keep everyone on the same page, or at least an attempt to provide updates through joint communications, it's the Illinois Works Together. That essentially is a newsletter from the Interagency Work Group. So it's from the state-level partners, hopefully informing everyone, state and local managers and people in the field and partners, what's going on, about all the different efforts as well as the resources available. We are currently doing that monthly. So far, September was the first issue, and October is the second issue. Both of those are available on the WIOA implementation portal, and they will be, and they're also emailed through some of the core program partners. And all of this is leading up to, everything that we're doing for the implementation activities currently is leading up to December for a joint training. The details have not been decided yet, but we do know and anticipate there is a need for a joint training of program partners about negotiating MOUs and infrastructure costs. And the plan is to do that in December so that in January you'll be able to kickstart your own local negotiations for MOUs and infrastructure costs. Lisa, will you advance the next slide or hand it over to me? Thank you. The Interagency Team, again, this is the state-level partners, the nuts and bolts group. They approve the monthly Illinois Works Together. And as Lisa described earlier, that a policy academy was facilitated and set that vision for what's going to drive the regional planning and local planning. But a lot of these tasks, like I said, are leading up to January 1. And the tasks that they've been focused on and that have been getting local feedback on are the three items below: adopting the framework for sharing local infrastructure and system costs. So there's a difference there between infrastructure costs and system costs. And then the governor is required to issue guidelines regarding negotiation of MOUs and memoranda of understandings, as well as the infrastructure costs and negotiating there. And those governor's guidelines, actually, a draft went out this morning to the governance and operations tags, or the task advisory groups, as well as to the interagency work groups simultaneously, so that they get the opportunity to review them, give us their comments. Those comments are due to us, to KEB, October 27th, and we'll continue to work with those. And they fold in a lot of the comments. The operations and governance tag, as well as the interagency work group, had seen previous generations of what became the governor's guidelines about MOUs and infrastructure costs. And we took all those comments and we folded them into the draft that was distributed this morning of the governor's guidelines. And then the other major item that is kind of the backbone of the system going forward is developing the criteria and processes for certification and local comprehensive one-stop centers. And those guidelines have to come from the State Workforce Board by law. So the State Workforce Board is in the process, actually we're in the process of developing those guidelines. And again, the governance and operations tags, as well as the interagency work group, saw previous versions or generations of the concepts that are turning into these guidelines. And those guidelines are planned to be distributed next week, again, for comment. So they're all just in draft mode. Nothing has been decided ultimately. It's just in draft mode. We're just getting perspectives from local and state perspectives. Okay, the next slide, the task advisory group's feedback, again, is a little redundant, but the comprehensive one-stop center locations and services is one component to the certification consideration, but the approach there is, and this is agreed upon widely, that all existing comprehensive one-stop centers will be grandfathered in for the first 2 years of local area designation. And all the comprehensive one-stop centers, that is in the law required to provide the 13 career services. And many of you have seen or heard about the career services matrix. That is available, the most recent version is available on the portal. It's also folded into the governor's guidelines so that it's the foundation in which the local areas will negotiate their infrastructure costs and other agreements in the MOU. The service delivery using technology, in the comprehensive one-stop centers, it is required that the services be provided, if partners are providing services using the technology, a version of technology, then they must ensure access to the services in a way that complies with the direct linkage requirement under WIOA. And that direct linkage requirement is described on page 3. Mark, would you show the October Illinois Works Together issue and scroll down to page 3? That is where the direct linkage requirement is described. So you have a resource to look back at. We also posted something very similar to this on the portal so that it's available to you anytime if you have questions about what direct linkage means and how you might comply with that. So that it's still the core program partners and the required program partners are still in the process of getting more specific. In the service matrix, they identified, we'll provide this service via technology. Now we're trying to get everyone to be more specific about what that means and what technology they'll use and how it'll satisfy direct linkage. And also, we're considering privacy issues of the participants. If, say you're using a Skype in a resource room, well, not the whole room should not hear that person's registration information. So, there are a lot of considerations going into this. It's not final, but we do know, and we are in the process of trying to get more specific about what technology means for each service and each partner. Now, the draft governor's guidelines do provide a standard budget outline for local MOU negotiations to complete. And the idea is to encourage local agreement between all the partners. Or if a local area decides to pursue an MOU with an individual partners rather than what's called an umbrella MOU, then they still have to agree on a budget. And there is a suggested standard budget outline as part of the governor's guidelines. The governor's guidelines also, the draft governor's guidelines also provide a 90-day period for local negotiations of MOUs. And if an area cannot come to an agreement in those 90 days, then a 45-day remediation period starts. And that would trigger a state-level team of the 4 core program partners and any other necessary local representatives to work with the local partners in facilitating an agreement. And if they still can't agree after that 45-day remediation period, then rather than the local budget with agreement on the infrastructure cost, then the state infrastructure funding mechanism would kick in, and the governor's guidelines also describe those. The next slide is the upcoming webinars. So adult education is slated for 10/21. We'll confirm with you, and we will send an Outlook calendar invite for that once it's confirmed. And the next few weeks, Wagner Pizer is on October 28th. November 4th is the Perkins Career and Technical Education, and there is none on Veterans Day. And then the 18th would be the National Farm Worker Jobs Program. And the way this works is that each, hopefully either Friday or Monday or sometime before the next week, you would receive an email notice about what the next week's topic is, and then we would send an Outlook calendar invite. And the list continues to grow. I mean, we have at least 150 people on this distribution list, so we will just do the best we can to make sure that everyone's able to participate. But if you cannot, for whatever reason, then remember that all of the recordings of the webinars are available on the WIOA implementation portal. And if December has not been planned out exactly yet, but the service integration and services will be covered apparently. So if you have any other ideas or comments about upcoming webinars, you're always welcome to send them to me. We'll just keep a running list and try to be responsive to the needs of all the required partners and the participants who are on today.
And just, Bethany, if I could just jump in, one of the things on the Wednesday webinars that we're going to continue to do, especially through October, is the crosswalk between the Title 1B services and the partner service, like we did with the Community Action Agency services, and we still know that we owe you all the crosswalk between our services and both rehab. As far as the service integration and services webinars in December, I know that we're going to kick off December with just a general webinar and overview of service integration and what it means, and then we will follow up with other types of services. For example, I know one of them that we want to do is on transitional jobs. The other one would be, how do you use the priority of service requirement? So if there are other specific service type webinars that you'd like to hear about, as Bethany said, just send those to her. We are looking for, especially those requirements in WIOA that we know are going to be a little challenging to implement. Those are the types of webinars that we want to make sure that we're providing for you so that they continue to be helpful. Also, we apologize again that on last week's webinar or 2 weeks ago that folks weren't able to get on. We are currently working with Illinois WorkNet. Okay, so I guess it's already been posted that we're working on getting more ports so we don't have that happen again. So there was no October 21st webinar. The slide says adult education. The October 20, the webinar that is October 21st is the Wednesday webinar. The October 22nd webinar is the kickoff webinar for the core partners on regional planning. So that week there will be, one WIOA Wednesday webinar, and then there will be a smaller webinar the following day on regional planning. Sorry that we were confusing on that. Apologize. So I think I have no other updates. If there are no other questions, sorry. I've been asked by a partner if their staff could be considered accessible through their cell phones. Will this be okay? Oh, that's a good question, Pam, and let's bring that up for discussion with the larger group. As long as they're accessible and can provide that direct linkage and get that person the service, I don't know why that wouldn't be acceptable. Do you, Bethany?
In real-time, on-demand are keywords that you have to think of, is that if they call a phone number, they have to be able to talk to a real person and not a recording, or not be directed to a website without any, interaction with a person. So, right now I can't think of anything that would prevent that from being acceptable, but I definitely want to confirm that,
Yeah. All right. If there's no other questions, Amy, the October 22nd is not open for all LWIAs to participate. That'll be decided within your LWIAs on who would participate. The November 3rd one is, but Chelsea went ahead and provided the link for folks. But I also think that that webinar will be recorded. So you'll be able to go out and access it after the 22nd, so that would be available for anyone. Again, who decides that participates in that is a decision among the program administrators and board staff for the LWIAs around the region. So for example, I mean, if you only have one LWIA in your region, that's pretty much, that's for at least the Title I person, that's a given. It'll be those areas that have, 2 or more LWIAs. So I think the most challenging one would be LWIA, the region, Region 4, the Chicago one, sorry. That'll be the one that I think would be the most challenging to decide. Otherwise, it's just 1, 2, and there might be another one that has 3 regions, 3 LWIAs. Okay. All right. I just want to thank everyone again for participating. I know today wasn't very exciting, but we did feel it was necessary to give you guys an update and just an update on what's been going on. Just make sure that we keep the lines of communication open. So thanks everyone again for participating, and we'll talk soon.